Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka the guy who's about to go full on beast mode as we break down the ending of Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy. Kingdom is finally here, and it wraps up the saga in pretty fitting fashion whilst leaving the door open for the future and further Netflix spin-offs. Also, I kinda wish that they'd been on Amazon, so we could have done some Amazon Prime jokes, but this is pretty much what we're stuck with, and let's be honest, it's not like I have good material anyway. Now in this video, we're going to be breaking down the overall plot and giving our thoughts on where things could be going for the future. Full spoilers ahead, so don't be a ratchet, and make sure you prune yourself from the timeline if you don't want anything ruined. Smash the thumbs up button if you're not a resistor, and make sure you subscribe for videos like this each and every day. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this, now let's get into Transformers. Okay, so the third chapter in the trilogy picks up in the prehistoric age of Earth. Our heroes and villains have both crash landed on the planet, and here they come face to face with the characters from Beast Wars. The series so far has kind of felt a lot like a greatest hits compilation of the Transformers story, and outside of these we of course met the Quintessons last time. Much like the AllSpark, the series gives you visions of what you desire most in a Transformers show, and it's clear that there are other plans for the future. Now the mission once more remains to recover the AllSpark, but things get confusing early on when our core characters realise that the Maximals and Predacons they meet on Earth are from their future. Due to Galvatron appearing with the golden disc in Earthrise and a future version of Megatron travelling to the past, the timeline has been massively altered, and thus the heroes from the past and future decide to team up once more in order to stop a darker path from coming to fruition. It's a lot of timey-wimey wibbly-wobbly stuff that feels like Days of Future Fast and the Furious, but as someone who loves time travel stories and the idea of variance, I quickly jumped on board with this finale. I think that this is probably the strongest entry in the trilogy, and though it's not newcomer friendly, they do enough to fill in the blanks for those whose first time transforming might be with this trilogy. Now things are made worse as we learn the golden disc contains the outcome of every battle in Megatron's future. It's basically the almanac from Back to the Future, and it makes failure almost impossible for the villain. As the Predacons and Maximals both fight to get the AllSpark, Megatron uses his knowledge of the future in an almost temporal pincer strategy, and it makes him infinitely more dangerous. However, Dinobot going turncoat does throw a spanner in the works as he manages to get the Matrix in episode 3, and he passes it to Optimus Prime so that the good guys can at least counterbalance the villains. Dinobot dies in one of the series' most heartbreaking scenes, and though I was expecting the character to have more screen time in the series due to his popularity, his impact doesn't go unnoticed. I think the main issue that the series has is that it's trying to fit in as much Transformers lore as it can, and because of this, some of the characters are kinda pushed to the wayside. This includes Starscream and his revolution, as well as Alita, who we last saw on Cybertron in the first season. I was expecting her to have much more of a role, but we'll talk about this later on in the video. Now the Matrix leads Optimus to a temple in which the AllSpark is kept, and he gets a warning of Nemesis Prime, who becomes a pivotal character in the finale. Megatron has clearly been watching the Heavy Spoilers show through the golden disc, and he heads to the temple in order to get the AllSpark. This is where we learn that it was actually then that Megatron lost it, and this is why his future versions have been trying to terminate the past and just make constant reboot after constant reboot in the hopes of getting one universe they can stick to. Now it's led to the timeline looking like a Jackson Pollock painting, and it will be interesting to see if they prune all of the branches in the future in order to streamline the universe. Though Optimus is initially beaten at the temple, he's saved by Optimus Primal, and he receives a message from a vision of Alita in which he says that Optimus must lose. Throughout the entry, we really see how the constant war just leads to more war, and Optimus even apologized to Primal at one point for creating a world in which he was drafted into a never-ending conflict. He allows Megatron to win, but this backfires for the villain, and the sparks in the temple power up the device. We learn it shares a symbiotic link with Cybertron, and with the planet dying, it too is weakening. After this, the characters try to return to Cybertron, but they're attacked by the Nemesis warship. However, Teletran arrives and saves them at the last minute. Optimus says goodbye to Primal, knowing that their actions will likely wipe them from existence, but we don't see this happen, and I think that due to the multiverse, the paradox is avoided. These characters will likely continue as they come from an alternate timeline, and another example of this happens in Avengers Endgame, when the heroes create a branch in reality that means Nebula can kill Nebula without any issues. I think these characters will be okay, and as we don't see them disappear, it's likely that they'll be there to fight Unicron when he arrives. Now they return to Cybertron and find it a snowy shadow of its former self. After making it to the Temple of the Allspark, Optimus is devastated to learn that a leader has been killed. Prime of course blames himself, and I love how this chapter especially focuses on how the characters' pasts and their futures all interlink to make this never-ending loop of war. During this time, Megatron comes face to face with Galvatron once more, who reveals that he is his future self that has been enslaved by Unicron. To make matters worse, Nemesis Prime shows up, and we discover that he caused the devastation on Cybertron. Now in case you don't know, Nemesis is very much a black mirror of Optimus Prime, and there have been a number of incarnations of him. His backstory has been alternated between him being either a clone of Optimus or a machine that was very much moulded in the shape of Prime. However, in War for Cybertron, he's the future version of the character, and he's very much the result of Prime refusing to give up the quest to get the Allspark. This has completely corrupted him, and the finale very much becomes about breaking the habits of the past in order to save the future. We learn that Nemesis Prime and Galvatron eventually end up working together, and that they want the Allspark so that they can destroy Unicron. Both he and Galvatron come from a timeline in which Optimus didn't return with the Allspark, and thus they intervened and changed things so that Prime could come back. They want to restore their own timeline and free themselves of the slavery, and Optimus Primal confirms this. However, he says that they should make the most of what they have and make a stand. It ramps up to a brilliant finale in which we watch as a Crisis on Infinite Earths is very much fought on the wasteland of Cybertron. Megatron realizes that he's not a slave to his future, and it's great watching him turn from someone who was willing to ravage Cybertron to someone who will fight for it no matter what. Watching all of the characters from the trilogy and Transformers lore makes a brilliant last battle, and Alita returns after Bumblebee takes the Allspark back to the temple. They stop Galvatron and Nemesis from making it there, and she tells Prime she loves him before calling him Orion. In case you don't know, before he became Optimus Prime, the character was known as Orion Pax, and for fans of the franchise, I think this will be a very touching moment. Due to the Allspark being returned, the darker timeline can be avoided, but that doesn't mean that now is the time to rest, and Optimus knows they must prepare for the future. Though he attempts to make a truce with the Decepticons, Megatron refuses, but he decides to find a place on the planet in which they won't come across one another. Starscream can still hear Unicron, and the season ends with us knowing that the villain is now after this timeline, as the usage of travelling through the dead universe has given him ideas. In space, he absorbs both Galvatron and Nemesis, and it's unlikely that they'll be appearing in the next season. Now Unicron will of course become the big bad should we get a sequel, and due to the final scenes here, I think more likely than not that Netflix will be continuing the Transformers show with a new series that carries across the characters from this one. Unicron is very much the devourer of realities, and over the years he's had several creators that have offered different takes on him. However, this has all recently been streamlined into one single continuity for the character, which relies on something called the multiversal singularity. Now this means that there's actually one Unicron across the entire multiverse, and that it's only possible for it to exist in one reality at a time. Unicron then travels between these realities, feasting upon them one by one, and we know that he has enslaved countless versions of other characters in order to achieve his goals. Now with Galvatron and Nemesis both being defeated, I think that he will try a new tactic, and who knows how he will use the dead universe to achieve his goals. I would actually love to see Teletran stand up to him, and I think that branch from the normal timeline does create a future fight in which he could be going against the Colossus. Either way, I think going forward that the planet will have some peace for some time, but with the arrival of Unicron, both the Decepticons and Autobots will decide to team up for the greater good. I'm really excited to see what happens next, and all in all, it was a great series. I have to say, the ending of this one has got me hungry for more, and that's not a Unicron pun, but yeah, just bring us more please. Now I think this was a really nice ending, and though some of the characters got brushed to the side, I still had a lot of fun with it, and that's why it gets a 7.5 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show, and also where you think things will be going in the future. Comment below and let me know, and just to let you know, we're running a competition right now and giving away 3 MCU box sets on the 30th of August. All you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment with your thoughts on the season. We pick the winners at random at the end of the month, and those who got the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our latest breakdown of The Bad Batch, which will be linked on screen right now. The Star Wars show is almost over and there's a lot to talk about, so definitely go head over there right after this. If not, then thank you for sitting through the video. I've been Paul and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.